Sharon. I really want to thank Farouz for just a sec, for her patience. And oh, you can't see me, can you? Oh boy. Can you go to the other picture of me that's actually this one? Well, it doesn't matter. You can all see me. Friends, I want to thank Farouz for her tremendous patience and persevere to invite me to speak at this wonderful fireside, which has attracted people from all over the world. I think it's absolutely marvelous. And Sharon for her technical assistance. I really appreciate it. I only made the correction about YWCA because the W stands for women. No biggie. So, friends, I want to share that this has been an amazing, amazing journey with the Virtues Project. It started over 30 years ago, and I'd like to share with you a little bit about the beginnings of it before we go into what are these 5 strategies to help you navigate your way through life with more meaning and purpose and joy. So it was a Baha'i-inspired project. My brother John Kavelin and my husband Dan Popov and I are all Baha'is. And because of that, John and I were raised, and our brother Tommy, to believe that we were world citizens and that our very purpose in life is to find our calling, to find our service to humanity. So we had a world view from the time we were very small. Well, when Dan and I were together, every year we would choose a service project for our family. And one time John came to visit us. And this is when my children, including my son Craig, who's here today from Manila, Philippines, John Kavelin came to visit us, and he had been an Imagineer with the Walt Disney Company. And he was feeling a bit of restlessness, spiritual restlessness, which is usually God's way of saying it's time to find another way to be in the world. And we had a wonderful visit. And at the end, we went to the Empress Hotel in Victoria, British Columbia, where we were living in Canada. And we had this wonderful brunch. And we were sitting there, and John was saying, I really wish that I could be of more direct service to the world than creating rides for Disneyland. So we talked about it. And Dan is a pediatric clinical psychologist. I was at the time the spiritual care director at a hospice and a psychiatric social worker. And in my career as a therapist, I had seen many, many, many young people who had attempted suicide. And we were talking about how lost the kids seem today, the violence that they perpetrate against themselves and against others. And so we said, well, you know what, somebody should do something about that. And John said, I would love to do something about that. So Dan said, well, why don't you join us for the summer and let's just take a break from Disney and, see if there's something that we can come up with as a service project. And that's how it started. That was the turning point of our lives, was that brunch at the Empress Hotel. So what happened was we spent the summer together in Victoria, and we called it our summer of discernment because we were praying and discerning, what is it that children need to be able to get past or to heal this violence? And we realized that it was the vacuum of virtues, that it was a lack of belief in their own purpose, their own value, their own place in the world. And we thought, well, they need to know the meaning of life. So where do you go to find the meaning of life? You go to the world sacred texts. And what we did, we studied through, especially through Dan, we looked at the world's sacred traditions, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, the Baha'i writings, the Quran, all of them, including, because I had worked with First Nations in Canada, the oral traditions of Indigenous people. And we found this incredible thing that running through all of them, like this silver thread of unity, are the virtues. In the Bible, in Galatians, they are described as the fruits of the Spirit. So the very expression of our souls is in the virtues. The Baha'i faith says that we were created to know and love God and to acquire the virtues of the kingdom. And all religions have this running through them. In the Buddhist books, the Dhammapada, there are whole chapters devoted to virtues. So what do virtues mean? They actually mean power and energy. So they are the powers of the soul. So we decided, this was a huge leap of faith for all of us. We decided to let go of the other work we were doing and to work on something that might turn into something. At that time, we didn't even know to call it the Virtues Project. But we ended up creating a book called The Virtues Guide, which is now called The Family Virtues Guide. And it was an amazing experience to write that book. You know, Dan presented the research, so he gave me tremendous quotes, all these quotes from different holy books on each of the virtues. John was the layout person and I was the author. And it was like handling lightning. It was so incredible. And I want to read to you one of the passages in the Baha'i teachings that inspired us to go forward with this. And this is a quote from Abdul Baha. You must become distinguished for loving humanity, for unity and accord, for love and justice. In brief, you must become distinguished in all the virtues of the human world. And that just, I remember the day that we said, what do we call this thing that we're doing? And out came this idea of the Virtues Project, because it felt to us like something active, something that would be of active service. So just before the Virtues Guide was finished, there was this big storm that came all of a sudden. And just before the storm came, gosh, I didn't mean to tell you all this, but I'll stop pretty soon on the history. But we bought a house together, or John bought the house, we paid the mortgage. You know, we decided to live together and do this project. And so I was walking across the deck to the little garage building where we were doing the work. And John was madly typing away. And all of a sudden, I said, John, save it and turn it off. He said, Linda, I'm almost finished with the book. I said, I know, you just got to do it, John. I didn't even know why I was saying that. He's rolling his eyes and he saved it, turned off the computer, and there's this huge clap of thunder and all the electricity went out. And the wind started howling around our house for 3 days. Well, when in the middle of this storm, we're huddled in the garage, which had a wood burning stove. And John says, what are we going to do with this book now that it's almost finished? Now we just kept taking one step at a time. It felt like we were being led down a path. We had to do our part and God would do God's part. And so we really had no marketing plan. None of us are business people. And so I said, you know what? We better meditate on that. John says, you know, I'm not a good meditator. I said, well, just get quiet and see what God says to you. So I'm sorry. So we were meditating, and what came to me was First Nations First and Integrated Community Development Project. I didn't even know what that meant. And I said, John, what about you? Because Dan was still in the other building. He said, something about Native people. I said, oh my goodness. How are we supposed to get this to First Nations? You know, all they need is more white people trying to tell them how to live and raise their kids. But I'll tell you what happened. And this is a result of us turning to God and asking for guidance, which is something that everyone can do, and which we are really engaged in as Baha'is. We're invited to do that, to pray and to meditate. So one day, the third day, the electricity came on, the heat came on, and the phone rang. And I picked it up, and this woman says, are you the people with the virtues? I said, yes. She said, will you bring it to my people? I said, who are your people? And she said, we are the Tsawataduk people in Kinkham Inlet, and we are in trouble and we need the virtues. And that was our first workshop. And it was out in the middle of nowhere, this little tiny Indian village. We had to fly in on a tiny plane. And that was the beginning. And I really didn't understand what this was. I don't think any of us did. But then when we were there and we gave our first workshop on the guide, you know, which was photocopied and stuck into a 3-ring binder at that time. And this woman said to me, you know, I hate to say this to a white woman, but she said, you and Dr. Dan have reawakened the spirit of our people, because this is who we are. We are people of courage. We are people of honor. We love our families. So that was the beginning, friends. And it's taken us all over the world. And now the project is in over 130 countries. So First, I'm going to stop there and find out what I can do to be of help. I'm getting little messages. I'm on twice, okay? Once, I cannot do the video on my laptop, so I've got my phone. Would you rather?
Linda, don't worry about a thing. You will come back again in February by hook or crook and do the same thing. There are people who are messaging me because our Zoom only has 100 people. And now I know friends, some friends are waiting there. I'm sorry, we apologize. Hi, Paula, we love you. So go ahead, Linda, please don't worry about it. We'll do this again.
I will definitely do it again, God willing. My goodness, that's very affirming. So now where was I? I was talking about I know I was talking about the virtues and spreading to the world. So we really started flying around very quickly. The people of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints found out about it. They started using the book in all their family meetings. It just started spreading around the world. It was like an idea whose time had come. And it was very important to us that it reflect the Baha'i teaching of the oneness of humanity and the oneness of religion. And so everything that we do and every book that I write has quotations from all different faiths. And that is the Baha'i approach. It's not about trying to teach the Baha'i faith by stealth. It is simply using these great teachings to make the sacred accessible in everyday life. And so that is really my mission in life, is to make the sacred accessible in everyday life, including in my own. So, friends, I want to read to you. Let's see, I'm going to wait on that one. I'm going to share with you the 5 strategies of the Virtues Project. Now, Sharon, is it possible to put that up on the screen?
I'll be right on it. We won't be able to see you as much, but I'll put it up and let me know when you want it down, okay?
Just put it up briefly so that people can see it, and then we can take it down. Sharon, thank you for your helpfulness. I really appreciate it. So friends, I'm going to share with you a little bit about each strategy with the understanding that these strategies can be applied in every aspect of life. There's only one of the Virtues facilitators gave a talk at an education conference, and one of the educators asked her, what's the actual age group for the Virtues Project Educator's Guide? You know, what is the actual age that the Virtues Project applies to? And this facilitator said, only one age, birth to death. So, these strategies are a lifeline, let me tell you, because once you master these, you are going through life as a lifelong learner who no longer allows guilt to rule your life, no longer shames or blames anybody, but instead sees the world through the lens of virtues, both strength virtues and growth virtues. Recognizes teachable moments instead of being defensive, having a problem and just getting all enmeshed in it. You look at every test in your life as a teachable moment. It changes everything. And finally, not finally, it's about setting clear boundaries with yourself about your health and your self-care. It's about setting boundaries in your relationships in the context of restorative justice. I'll tell you more about that. The 4th strategy is honor the spirit. And this means that if you are a person who starts an organization, you want to capture what is the spirit of that? What is the real driving force in the commitment that people are making when they come to work with this company? In the family, it is making sure you have a routine of reverence together. And the 5th strategy is offer spiritual companioning, which is all about listening. So you can take that down, Sharon, perfect. And I'll, let me share a little bit with you, including some stories about each of the 5 strategies. And I don't want to speak too long because I want to give you a chance to ask questions. Speaking the language, if you think about language, language is the vehicle of thought. And Abdu'l-Baha, who is the center of the covenant of the Baha'i faith, said that the reality of man is his thought. So virtues have 5, that language implies 5 things. It's the way we think, the way we see ourselves and other people, the way we listen, the way we speak, and the way we act. So it is a whole frame of reference. Well, I call it a frame of reverence for your life. And so I want to give you a quote from Saadi, who is an Islamic scholar. And Saadi said, Use a sweet tongue, courtesy, and gentleness, and thou mayest manage to guide an elephant by a hair. Does that remind you of your marriage at all? I mean, it's so very important to use language that is gentle, that is clean. Oops, it says I should join audio. Nope. Can you hear me from a different place now? I don't
Yeah, we
know.
can hear you fine.
Okay.
We hear you okay.
All right, fine. Thank you. Okay, so let me give you an example of if you look at yourself, we're told in the Baha'i teachings to bring ourselves into account each day. Well, what does that mean? That means that you are aware. We are aware of our strengths and we are aware of our growth virtues. I'm not going to call them weaknesses. They're opportunities to grow. And so it's very important to know your strengths and your growth virtues. If you're raising a child, you want to really emphasize the strengths they have, and you want to invite them continually to cultivate the virtues that they need some growth in. So there's the virtues they show and the virtues they need to grow. In schools that are immersed in a Virtues Project culture, one of the things I love is that the principal and the teachers model the 5 strategies. And so you walk into the office and you see photos of each of the teachers with their strength virtues listed under them and their growth virtues, saying, I'm working on this one. And so that encourages the students to do the same. So let me tell you a quick story about the language of virtues as I've used it quite recently. I'm teaching a children's class here on Lanai, here in Hawaii. It's a little tiny island. And one time the children came over and they were outside where we were living, and I could hear, they usually played really beautifully together. This is before the class actually began. And I had just put a white furry rug outside for them that someone had given me, so they could sit there instead of on the cold concrete of our little lanai. And they were all trying to get a space on the rug, but 2 of the children were lying on the rug and there wasn't room for anybody else. So hearing this crying and screaming, and I went out and I said, what's going on, kids? We want to sit on it, and they're lying on it. So I said, I wonder what would be fair to everybody. And immediately all the noise stopped and they're going, And one of the girls who was lying on the rug said, I know, we can sit on the rug and everybody can sit there together. I said, that's a very good expression of unity, honey. Very discerning answer. You use one word and it'll be magic. Not always, but if children are in the right frame of mind, it leads them to solve their own problems. One little girl whose mother was using the virtues language, speaking the language of virtues, she came to her mom just before dinner and said, Mom, I want to take the puppy outside and play with him. And her mother said, sorry, love, you can't do that right now because we're going to have dinner in about 2 minutes. Mom, I think you should use a new virtue. And her mother said, really? She said, I think you need the virtue of letness. So her mother said, actually, this is a moment of obedience for you. Okay. So children really catch on to the language quickly. So if you're going to use it with your children, you better practice it first because they're going to be very adept at it. Speaking the language of the virtues is number 1. Number 2 is recognizing teachable moments. Now, the Baha'i faith has one of the most powerful views of why bad things happen to good people. Because, and it's in all the holy books, but in the Baha'i teachings, it's made even more clear that the tests that are come to us in our lives are here for our development. They are not here to hurt us. Baha'u'llah says in the hidden words, every atom in existence I have ordained for thy training. This is school. This life is school. And we are cultivating all the virtues that will be our really what we take with us. And the only thing we take with us, besides our memory, into the spiritual realm when we die, and go and come back to life or remain alive in the spiritual realm. So one of the things that Baha'u'llah said is, thy tests in a prayer, thy tests are a healing medicine to such as are nigh unto thee. The test itself is the healing if we recognize the teachable moment, if we get the lesson. And so whenever I feel stuck in a place of sadness or depression or anything, I say, what do I need to learn? What do I need to grow? What virtue do I need? And very often I will use a virtues pick. I will go to the Baha'i writings. I will go to the Bible. I will go to the Bhagavad Gita and ask that question, what is it that I need in order to move forward? And so I want to read to you one of my favorite passages from Judaism. This is in Proverbs 3:11-12. My son, despise not the chastening of the Lord, neither be weary of his correction. For whom the Lord loveth, he correcteth, even as the father the son in whom he takes delight. He loves us, and that's why he corrects us. Now, having said that, a lot of our tests we cause ourselves. And that isn't God doing that. That's us getting stuck. And so we need to unstick. And we can always call on a virtue to lead us out of that stuck place. The third strategy is set clear boundaries based on restorative justice. Now, gosh, I could say so much about this one. But you know, Baha'u'llah said, the best beloved of all things in my sight is justice. And it is his gift to us. And you know, in the world today, there are horrible voids of justice. There are tremendous lack of justice. There is great injustice because of racism, sexism, all the ways that we are divided. And Baha'u'llah says that he has come to create one planet and one people, to have us recognize that we are one. There's only one God, there's only one religion, which has many chapters in the same book. It's all leading in the same direction. Humanity learning and growing into our soul power. And so there are many soul lessons that we are all going through collectively as humanity. And we better get the teachable moment right now about climate, about equity, about all these things that Baha'u'llah says, it's time, humanity, to move out of adolescence and to grow up to what God expects of us. And God expects us to take care of this planet and take care of each other. So boundaries can be anything from a school class promise of this is how we want to help each other, treat each other this year. Every family needs some clear ground rules. And both of the books, The Educator's Guide and The Family Guide, lay out how do you do that and what does that look like. But it needs to be very simple. There should be only 3 or 4 clear boundaries with consequences. I'm going to tell a story about my son, Craig, I hope he's still here. One time when he was 3 years old, he did something I was
Yep,
not
here.
happy with. Okay, good. And I sent him to, I was so mad at him for doing this that I sent him to his room. I don't even know what it was. I think he did something to his brother, his big brother. And he said he went to his room, and I went in there, and you always call the child back to the virtue. You don't just punish them. You sometimes you could give them a timeout, but you always invite them back to understand the teachable moment. And I said, Craig, now why did mom send you to your room? He says, I don't know. I think you just popped your cork. So, it's better to do it when you're not to use your self-discipline to withhold the anger and to rather use a virtues correction. But those were the days before the Virtues Project. How I wish I'd had them then. So, like I'm thinking of these daycares that are run with the Virtues Project. All throughout New Zealand and Australia, we used to go to daycare centers and schools, and they'd have the naughty chair, or they'd have the red dot where a child was sent out in the playground to stand on that red dot to show that they had done something bad. Now we, in the Virtues Project, we say, give up shaming and naming. Give up shaming for naming the virtue. And so we would say to them, you need to replace the naughty chair with the peace chair or the peace corner. Now they have a little corner with a rug and some pillows, some Play-Doh and virtues cards and a virtues poster, and it's a time for reflection. There's a school in New Zealand that built an entire separate building for what they call the Virtues Help Room. And this is a school that went from a tremendous level of violence to no incidents at all. They went from being a violent school to a virtue school. And I'm actually writing about that, how that principal did it right now. But she used the 5 strategies, and her teachers all became immersed in it as well. Okay, so honor the spirit. I know I'm not doing justice to any of these strategies, but I just want to give you a taste. Honoring the spirit has to do with treating every single person with dignity. They could be in prison, they could be in your family, wherever they are, whatever the circumstances, they need to be treated with dignity. It also means having a routine of reflection, whether you are in a company, a school, a family. And I particularly love this one for my personal life because let me just read you a few quotes that I love from the scriptures. This is from the Upanishads of Hinduism. Meditation and action. He who knows these two together gains immortality. Meditation and action should never be undertaken independently. Your action should be mindful. Your meditation should result in action. So, and then Jeremiah in the Torah, Jeremiah 33:3, he says, call to me and I will answer you and show you great and hidden things that you do not know. Now, I personally believe, we read that we only use about 10% of our intelligence. I think we only use about 1% of our spiritual capacity, especially when it comes to meditation. So that spirit that Jeremiah was talking about, you call to God and God will answer you. And we know all through the Baha'i prayers, he is the prayer hearing, prayer answering God. So listen to what Abdu'l-Baha says about that same question, that things will be revealed to you that you don't know. The spirit of man is itself informed and strengthened during meditation. Through it, affairs of which man knew nothing, are unfolded before his view. Now that has happened to me so many times I can't even tell you, especially when I'm serving. So I'll give you one example. I went through a time when I was very physically limited by post-polio syndrome. I had polio as a child, and the symptoms came back with a vengeance when I was in my early 50s, when I was right in the middle of doing the Virtues Project. So I couldn't travel for quite a while, could hardly walk. And I was like telling you that. Senior moment here. Anyways, I was writing a book. That's why. I was writing a book. As I got better, I realized that I was not the only one with an energy syndrome. People with chronic fatigue and other things. So I decided to share my story and write something to the world about a miraculous thing that happened to me when I had post-polio. One day, I actually thought that I was dying because I woke up and I could hardly breathe. It was like something, a big cat sitting on my chest. And I got up and I dragged myself to my prayer corner and got into the chair. And I had lost the capacity to meditate because my brain was so fogged. But I called out loud, I said, Lord, I don't know what to do. Am I supposed to get ready to die? Or what do you want? How can you help me? And all of a sudden, that inner voice came very clear. And it said, I will give you 10 rules for health. Write them down and follow them. I was so shocked. And I started taking dictation. And all 10 rules start with a P, which the first one was purify your life. And I was told what to eat, how to drink, a lot of water. And it went all the way down to plan a sustainable life. And afterwards I said, how come everything starts with a P? And the voice said, oh, I just like to do that sometimes. So I have a very active relationship with whoever is talking to me. I think of it as my A team, your angels in the next world, advisors, and ancestors, because they are the ones that God provides to us as helpers. And if we don't call on them, we're promoting unemployment after death, because that's their job. So, sorry, I don't want to go on too long. But offer spiritual companioning. How many times have you been in a conversation where the other person doesn't ask you a single question and you do all the listening? Well, bless you for listening, because Abdu'l-Baha said, may you always listen, always hear, always speak with the power of the Spirit. Now, this is one of the most powerful, I guess all the strategies are powerful because they're based on this ancient knowledge contained in all the revelations of God. But spiritual companioning is the capacity to listen, to help someone get to the heart of the matter by letting them empty their cup. And always in the bottom of the cup is a pearl of truth. They don't need your advice. They need you to listen them into their own wisdom. And so doing this with a child, I remember one time we were we were way up north of the Arctic Circle. And there was this we were crammed into a house, and all these people came to hear about the Virtues Project. And this little girl was there, and she went into the kitchen and she screamed because she had hurt herself. And everybody sort of turned their attention to her, and her mother was saying, it's okay, it's okay. And I went in and I crawled through the legs of the people to get down to her on the floor. And I said, what happened? What is the magic word when you're companioning? What is this like for you? What happened? What does that mean to you? And I said, what happened? And she said, look at this. And I said, that looks horrible. You really hurt yourself. She goes, and stops crying and screaming. Now, why does that work? Why does that help? Because someone is acknowledging the pain. And that is what is a very important part of companioning, is to acknowledge the pain. Now, when it was time to leave, I went back and finished my presentation. And then when it was time to leave, all the people came out in the 60 below weather to say goodbye to us. And this little girl climbs through all the legs and she waves goodbye. And her mother was still confused about why did she stop screaming when you got on the floor with her. It's so simple, but it's not easy to remember because we think we should fix other people. What we need to do is what Abdu'l-Baha did. You know, when there was a minister in New York, this is my last story, I think, named Howard Colby Ives, and he was a devoted minister. And he just was so drawn to Abdu'l-Baha. And he said that he would come to Abdu'l-Baha with a problem. And Abdu'l-Baha would just listen in silence, this loving, receptive silence. And he said, Howard said it was like being listened to with my own ears. And there was no advice, there was just love. Now, in the companioning process, which you can read about in the Virtues books, you bring someone out of that by saying, what was helpful about talking today? And then you give them a virtues acknowledgement that's as precise as you can about what you saw and heard. You don't make it up, you make it fit. So I want to leave you with the notion of, I won't leave you, I'm just going to end this with the idea that you don't want to be a jewel thief in the lives of other people, especially children. So let them have their teachable moment. Don't try to control them. Give them clear boundaries and freedom within those boundaries. And the most important thing is to have those virtues as your frame of reference and your frame of reverence. And friends, it works just as much in an organization as it does in our personal spiritual lives. So thank you for your courtesy and listening. I want to ask Sharon, before we go to questions, were you able to capture that virtue card that I sent you?
I will get it up for you, Linda. Just give me a couple
Good.
minutes, of course,
No,
for sure.
no rush at all. No rush, because I'll explain to people what we're doing. Friends, one of the practices in the Virtues Project is called a Virtues Pick. And this is something that I do in part of my prayer and meditation every day. You know, that routine of reverence, which is read something that inspires you, pray, meditate, and serve. Choose how you're going to serve today, whether it's your work, you know, or doing a kindness for someone. But when I'm finished with my reading, my praying and meditating, I choose a virtue for the day. And I want to give you that opportunity. And so I'm going to ask, Sharon's getting the card up. I did a virtues pick on our behalf just before I came on. And it was actually, it's in one of the virtues card sets called Sunset Meditations. Is that backwards for you? Anyway, it's self-discipline. And I would like someone to actually read the card.
Linda, I hope you have water there. I'd like to offer you a water, but you're quite far away from me. I hope that you're keeping hydrated. You're fine.
That's
Great.
very thoughtful of you, Sharon.
So while I get that up, maybe we could start with a question. And I want to commend you on your timeliness. That is exactly 8 o'clock. And even with the technical challenges, you made up some time. You created time. I guess your A's are taking care of you.
My A team's pretty good about timing. Thank you.
So would you like a hand up? How do you like to function? Do you want a question in the chat? How do you like that, Linda? Questions.
If someone else can watch over the chat, we could start with the chat, but maybe start with just to confuse you all. I think it's easier if you put your questions in the chat box.
Linda, Masa's hand is up. Can we take care of that?
There's you good assertiveness there. You do it the way it works for you.
Okay. I was just going to put it in the chat, but thank you for June. I have I'm hoping it's a very quick question, but first I want to thank you, Linda, and thank you for June for setting this up and organizing it, and Sharon for sharing. You mentioned a few schools that you're aware of that are using the Virtues Project. So I'm wondering if you're familiar with most of the schools that are using it, or if you get feedback from them, if you're aware which schools are using them, because I've actually suggested this at my kids' school, and they go to a Waldorf school. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Waldorf.
Of course.
So I was wondering if you've had any experience dealing with Waldorf schools, and if they do use.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Montessori schools and Waldorf schools are very, very good fit for them. Now,
Okay.
Lisa, I'm retired from the Virtues Project, and it is now run by the Virtues Project International Association, and it's at virtuesproject.com. So you can actually contact them to find out. They're compiling a list of current schools that are using it, but I know lots of Montessori and Waldorf schools do use it.
Okay, wonderful.
It really fits their philosophy of child-centered education.
Yes, it definitely does. A lot of stuff you were talking about resonates with the way the Waldorf schools work, but our particular school is a little bit behind in all of that stuff, and I'm on the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging Committee. So that's why I suggested this and I didn't hear back. So I was curious to know if, like, because they're pretty strict with certain things that they do and they don't within their curriculum.
Well,
but I'm glad to know other Waldorf schools do use it. And
I would suggest you bring them a copy of the Virtues Project Educator's Guide and show them the book. And you can also go to contact us at virtuesproject.com and ask the question.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Linda, I do have that Virtues pick for you. Would you like me to put it up for it right now?
Okay, hold on a moment. I want to have everybody experience this Virtues pick. Now, normally you pick your own virtue, and there's an app you can get at virtuesmatter.org. I'll put that in the chat box actually, or maybe someone else would. virtuesmatter.org. But the way we're going to do this is, I'd like someone to read the virtue card, and then I want you to think about, how does that speak to you right now? And normally I put you in rooms to talk to each other, but we're not going to do that today. So would somebody please read that card? The front is the one with the photo that Dan took, and read the front and the back.
I'll read it.
Thank you. Thanks, Craig.
Sure. There is a freedom that only consistent discipline.
Can you start with the other side?
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I only see one side there.
No.
Let's see.
Okay, well, I'll read that one and you can read the.
Okay, sure.
Self-discipline, being our own leader.
This really speaks to me right now, by the way. Thank you. There is a freedom that only consistent discipline can bring. We set goals and fund the will to achieve them step by step. Find the will to achieve them step by step. Is it fund? Okay. Lethargy can sink us. Self-discipline is the wind in our sails. By effort and heedfulness, discipline and self-mastery, let the wise one make for oneself an island which no flood can overwhelm. Dhammapada 225.
So Craig, I want to put you on the spot. How does that speak to you?
Well, as someone who's allowed food addiction to damage my health somewhat, and having recently had a sort of healing retreat, one of the things that's come to me so clearly is how it's when you said the P, purify your life, how rather than, well, just how vital it is to plan and not to allow toxic things into your life if you want to live life more purposefully and in a more fulfilling way. That awareness just came to me on a deeper level. You know how you know things all your life but you don't get them, and I've just got it, where you just have to, if you want to do important things in the world, first you have to heal yourself. If you want to heal the world, first you have to heal yourself. And that means being really consistent and dogged in your determination to protect yourself from all toxic things that take away your energy, because you need your energy to serve. So that's really coming through clear to me right now in my life. And I haven't drank any Coke or eaten any sweets or anything for about 2 weeks now, and I'm feeling amazing. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Craig, I want to honor you for the determination. I really hear that. Your determination to stay on this path of purification.
Thank you.
Okay, friends, that was a virtues pick, and that was my son. Thanks, Craig. That was really helpful of you to participate. Friends, I want you to just spend a few seconds thinking, how will self-discipline help me in my life right now? If we were doing this in a virtue sharing circle, we'd each share, everyone would listen, and then we get virtues acknowledgements. It's more powerful that way, but you're going to have to give yourself a virtues acknowledgement.
Thank you. So next we have Mina with her hand up, and I just want to bring to everyone's attention that I put in the chat the blog, your blog, and also the Facebook, so that people can copy that and put it in their bookmarks.
Thank you. Now, can we just be quiet for maybe 1 minute and reflect on self-discipline? And then I'd like people to put in the chat box just maybe a sentence. How does that speak to you right now? So I'm seeing it brings order to the forefront for me. Thank you. To me, it's about restoring my pace of grace. I wrote that. Self-discipline equals freedom and happiness. Absolutely. I stop any negative thoughts or judgment. I'm going to just say It's much easier to start flooding those thoughts with something positive than to stop having negative thoughts. Instead of saying, don't be afraid to, say, I have the courage to. Replace that with a virtue. Brings clarity and focus. I feel relaxed and comfortable. That's great. Thank you, everybody. Why don't we, let's see. Thanks to Craig. Oh, it brings a sense of potential peace. Thanks to Craig, his practice is an inspiration to me as well, since I also struggle in that area. Great. And I think we'll go on to questions. So please, whatever way you want to do it, Firuz.
Sharon is chairing. Sharon John, go ahead, Aziza.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, thank you. And sorry to interrupt that silence. In our chat, there was a question about if your book is available in an audio version. I'm just going to find it up here. Can your books, especially A Place of Grace, be available as audio books?
That's something I really want to pay attention to, but not yet. Sorry about that. I really would like to get that into audio version.
Thank you. I know Mina had her hand up. I'm just checking if Mina does still have a question. Mina?
Yes, if I may. Alava, thank you so much. It's been amazing. So many lights going on in my head. There's so many coins dropped. It makes sense. I just wanted to see, pardon me, I've been struggling with some depression, anxiety, and self-doubt. Trying to step a new cycle of rather than shaming and blaming. I would like to see, are there any suggestions, support groups that we can, as adults, we can practice this strengthening virtues?
Mina, first of all, thank you for your enthusiasm for what I shared with you today. And second of all, your courage to share that question and be so open about it. I really believe that when any of us is going through a really tough time emotionally, it's very important, even if you're Persian, to get a listening ear, find a good therapist, and spend some time. It doesn't have to be forever. It's not, you're not signing up for life. But like, for example, when my brother John died, he was my partner, he was my best friend, and I hit rock bottom. I couldn't accept it. And as a Baha'i, I totally know that he's having a great time, but I felt like I couldn't live without him. It was a huge hole. And I was totally shocked by the grief because I used to be a grief counselor. So I went to a grief counselor and I had about 4 sessions over 2 months, and it was really helpful. I actually had to start going before John died because I was going into anticipatory grief. So I really want to encourage you to do that. Also, a lot of people in the virtues community form virtue sharing circles. And they are awesome because you tell each other the truth with an understanding that it is confidential, it is with your small group. I'm thinking if you put Mina, if you would put that question in the chat box with your email address, then someone can contact you maybe. Where do you live?
In Canada,
In
BC.
Canada. Well, it doesn't matter anymore because, yeah, I know.
You're from, I feel you're local.
I was local, now I'm in
Yes.
Hawaii. But
Yes, you know, for sure.
yeah,
I do appreciate
we're
that.
local we were in Canada for about 30 years, I think. Anyway, I attend one of those circles, and it's just fantastic because you get to know each other. You listen in silence as someone shares their check-in. And it's not long, and sometimes there's tears, and a lot of times there's laughter. And afterwards, people ask a couple of companioning questions, but mostly they just give virtues acknowledgments. And it's just a place to be heard. You cannot be alone with these feelings, especially self-doubt.
Yeah.
I really honor your courage, Mina, to share that, because you're probably speaking for quite a few people.
Thank you kindly. And
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Linda. We'll move next to Shala, please.
Yes, Linda, I love your project. We were introduced to it in the 90s, and we had moved to China and then Singapore, and of course you were doing it in Australia. And so we asked to have it in Singapore at our Baha'i Center.
Yes.
We invited a lot of the teachers in Singapore, and it was a fantastic project. I don't know if you remember.
Of course, I
My
do.
cards and our book and the songbook, and at that time it was the CD, and it was a cassette, and then we got the CD, and it was fantastic experience, and we started using it in our children classes. And then I moved to Alabama after some time, teaching inner city school, and I introduced it into the project, which was, this was funded with No Child Left Behind. And so we had every week we had one virtue, and it was announced by the principal at the beginning of the week, and everybody practiced it. And it was fascinating because the kids would come and say, I did practice. And I have a little story. One kid said, I practice compassion. And I said, oh, you did? And how did it go? Well, I taught my mother to be kind to me. So I thought it was fascinating.
I love it. I love your enthusiasm for it.
Yeah,
And,
I love it. And then we started a women's group.
oh, wonderful. Yeah.
And then we used the cards.
Yes.
And it was a tough women's group. There was a lot of crying, and there was a lot of pain, and there was a lot of sharing. And it was a good experience. And then we started using it in our devotionals.
Yes.
Until this virus hit us, we used to have it, we would pull one out, they would pull one out, and then they would talk about it.
Sure.
And of course,
I meant to include that in the description of the sharing circle, the virtue sharing circle. The first thing we typically do is to pull a virtue. And we, each of us, after sharing from our heart very openly, we then say how that virtue speaks to us. And the others give virtues acknowledgements. So I really appreciate your sharing today, and your faithfulness to the Virtues Project, from moving all the way from Singapore to Alabama, which is really a foreign country. And it's amazing how your spirit of determination and purposefulness encouraged the whole school to respond.
but I want to tell you that the project helps with education, with learning, because it uplifts the kid to want to get to be better.
Yes.
And I use this, but also it's fascinating. A woman called me, and she's a Christian woman in Alabama, has written a little pamphlet, Balcony People. And I don't know if you have ever heard of it. Talks about be a balcony person, not a basement person. A balcony person makes you feel good about yourself when you want to be achieve and when wants you to be, able to serve humanity. And then
Yes.
the basement person is reversed. And you know what? She purchased the set.
Wonderful.
Love the
And
Virtue
I
Project.
want to put a plug in really for the virtues. I have this on my phone, and it is incredible to be able to shake your phone and do a virtue spec. There's all kinds of sets now, not only the ones that I've written, because I've written probably
52.
No, I've written about 20 different sets of decks of virtues, including ones for various religions that only want their own scriptures on the cards. So we have Confucian cards, we have Jewish cards, we have Hindu, we have Sikh, etc. But the main set are the virtues reflection cards. And on this app, they're called the virtues resilience cards. And they're also called sunset cards. And then there's the children's, the family cards, which most of you have probably seen. Well, not most of you, but some Baha'is certainly have. So if you look on that app, you can choose whichever set you want. And it's a great thing to have them right with you to do a pick whenever you want. I want to give some other people a chance to ask questions before we finish up, because I know time is flying.
Thank you, Linda. I see Lee waiting so patiently. Lee, please.
Well, thank you very much. Linda, I first of all want to say that there are no ways to express my appreciation for what you've done and what you're doing today. There's no words. Secondly, I want you to know I knew your brother, John Kavelin, at North Carolina School of the Arts.
Oh, really?
So I was with you in the grief period. I've been in China 20 years, and I just want to add to what was mentioned about the Virtue Project that I worked in an international school where we actively used the Virtues Project. And what was very meaningful for the kids was to be able, we would give a leaf whenever a teacher or another individual, either another child, would recognize a virtue in someone else, then they would get a leaf. And then the leaf would be put on a tree in the principal's office. So that was an acknowledgement, which meant a lot. And that was a very effective way. I just wanted to add that to what the previous speaker mentioned, that if you are working in a school and this tree, which is in view of everyone, the child has the name on the tree and the virtue that they practiced. It may also say what they did or maybe not, but then everyone can see and they feel very good about that. Thank you.
First of all, it means a lot to me that you knew John and that you cared about him, obviously.
Yeah.
And that is such a great creative way for a school to use virtues acknowledgements. Because I think of all the things that one can take, even from just today, if you start acknowledging people for the virtues you see in them, one or two, not 17 at a time, and have it be relevant to what has just happened, is the most helpful. I also want to say I just heard about a school in Singapore that's gotten some award or something for establishing the Virtues Project this year. Okay. Oh, the link of the app. Yes, I'm going to do that right now. Let's see, how do I get to everybody? Oh, there.
I think Tara did it already.
Oh, Dara did it already.
Tara,
Yes.
yes, sorry. Tara.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Dara. There it is. Any other question? Sarush has his hand up. Sorry, Sarush.
I don't have a question. I'll make a comment very quick. First of all, you look like a brilliant star. I met you in 2001, I think, in Spain in a hotel, and you took me in the patio area and told me something really good, and that solved my problem between me and my mom.
Oh Oh gosh.
But
I remember that.
just for the folks, I went to Spain. I live in Southern California now, been here over half a century. And we went there pioneering, and we took these virtues guide books, and including a teacher version and the family, and we gave it to almost everybody. But then I moved to Chile for 3 years. And in Chile, there was a Christian family from Spain. And they got a hold of this book. 2 young girls, 21, 23, super beautiful. They decided to start a project in Cartagena, Colombia. If you want to look at the Christmas lights, most beautiful place is probably right now, Cartagena. With 100 children. These children are mostly black skin, very poor. They probably never washed their hand with soap. They translated these books. I know there's a copyright issue. We gave them as much as we could. And there was no school, official school. They had to drive 20 minutes and then take the boat for 10 minutes and walk another 15 minutes. This school, as of now, only with this book, there are 400 of them, 400 children. You cannot believe it. I mean, we just passed a book to them and they did the job for us.
Wow.
So the government started a school just a few years ago there. Unfortunately, they didn't support the library where the books are. And I have tons of photos if anybody wants. And thank God we have Mona Foundation, United States.
Yes.
I asked them kindly if they can support this project, and they did. It took them a while, they did. So they are very happy. I think this is the best accomplishment I ever done in my life with your book, my book. I wish my parents had this book when I was young.
Me too.
But that's it, the comment. I'm very grateful, thankful because of your book. And those children they're much older now. They're all thankful. And the teachers are as well. Thank you.
Well, God bless your initiative and your service to bring that book there and to keep encouraging it to spread. I mean, that's why the Virtues Project is out there, is because of people like you that just keep planting the seeds. And I really love hearing from all of you what you've done with this body of work. Really pleased. You know, if I had one last comment, I would say, remember that when you are going through a test, you're not a victim, you're an athlete. And the great coach is beckoning you to something greater. It doesn't mean to ignore your feelings or to try to pretend you don't have them. You have to actually go deeper into them and really companion yourself, and then have a circle around you, a women's circle, a men's circle, a circle of any kind, or a therapist to help you get it all out in front of you. Sometimes you have to fall apart to put all the pieces back together the way they're meant to be. So we need to not be afraid of that. We need to embrace it and embrace ourselves with great love and tenderness when we're going through a rough time.
Oh, that is beautiful, Linda. And I am a physical athlete, so I'm going to look at these tests as athleticism for my virtues in my mind and challenging me. I wonder if you have one more second. I see one question from David, Margie, Catherine. They said, Linda, I wonder if you could expand on.
May I say something, Sharon? Please, may I say something? I apologize. I really apologize. Linda, this can't be the last remark here, because we're sitting here and you're sitting here and the whole world is sitting here and Sharon has taken off. So there's no restraint for time.
It's your boundary, it's up to you.
Yeah, my boundary is till 2 in the morning, so we're here. Please go ahead.
Okay, well, I just don't like to impose on people's time, but you know, anyone can leave whenever you wish, but I'm happy to stay on for a while longer. I do see that question about if I could say something on restorative justice. Okay, in restorative justice, that is an approach. It's not only within the Virtues Project, it's actually a whole body of work about, instead of incarcerating people or punishing, what you do is you get the victim and the perpetrator together and you work it out. And it's about making amends, making it right. And it is about restoring not only the victim. Say a child is aggressive toward another child. There may be something that triggered that. So, for example, in the help room at the Frankton School in Hamilton, New Zealand, what they do is they say, we are here to restore not only the victim, but the offender. And they companion the offender. What was going on when you hit him? What happened just before then? What were you feeling? What virtue do you think would help you? I wonder what it would have been like if you'd used your self-discipline. How do you think things would have turned out if you'd used your voice instead of your fists? It's all about restoration. I've done a lot of healing work with the Virtues Project amongst the First Nations across Canada and other Indigenous people around the world, actually. And it's just, to see them respond the way they do with such depth of healing. Everybody thinks this is a nice, cute little parenting program. It's so not. It's so beyond that. Although parenting is like number one, because that's where the child is shaped and supported and told who they really are. But in restorative justice, there is a plan to make amends. There is a way of restoring the child to the classroom, or when it's an adult situation, if the one who has been hurt is open to it, there will be a coming together to share their experience, and they listen to each other. They hear each other's pain, and then something is done to make amends. I wonder if anybody else has something to say about restorative justice. Maybe Dave or Dara. I know you know a lot more than I do about it. But it's a big part of the Educator's Guide, is how do you have a disciplined system that's based on restorative justice.
I did some restorative justice work where I worked at a mediation center in a Jane and Finch area, which is a very sensitive area in Toronto. And there were different levels of doing it. And if you were very good, you would have gone to the jail and you would have taken the other party to jail, and you will be speaking with each other there. I never had the courage to do that. So basically what we did was minor offenses, but these were people who would have gone to custody for 6 months to a year. And it was one of the most powerful things I've ever seen in my life. And I never knew you had done virtuous work with that. I think that would be amazing.
It really is, Feroz. First of all, bless your service for being involved in restorative justice. It's such an important thing. More and more now that the awareness of the world is waking up to all the injustice that's out there and the ways that we have over-incarcerated, especially African Americans here in the US. But I just want to tell you that whenever I was invited to work in a prison, I would go. And at first I was quite scared. The first time I ever did was at a juvenile detention center that was just so out of the dark ages. as you walk through, the doors clang behind you, you know, and I was brought into this central area, and all these girls were there behind bars, these young kids from 12 to about 18. Most of them were violent offenders. They'd either murdered someone to join a gang, or they'd committed some other kind of violence. And they all came out, and we sat around in a circle. My dear friend Terry Ward, who's now one of my angels, was a chaplain, and she brought me in to just share briefly with the girls about the Virtues Project. So what I did was I put the Virtues poster up on the wall. And this is what I always said when I go into a prison. I'm here to introduce you to someone very important. And they thought I was going to say myself. I said, I'm here to introduce you to you. And they go, what? So these girls, we did a virtues pick. And what I do when I am working with people is I always model it. I guess I didn't do that today, but Craig did it for me. I always model it so that they know that I'm a human being. I'm not this perfect paragon of virtue. I'm someone who aspires to call on my virtues and to become stronger and stronger as I live. And so we did a virtues pick, and each girl picked a virtue when it was her turn. And all the other girls were quiet while she was sharing. And I mean, the things these girls shared were something else. And whenever each one was finished, I and the other girls would give them a virtues acknowledgement. And the tears just poured down their faces. And there was a guard standing on a, whatever you call that, like a platform above us. She had a gun in her belt. I mean, she was watching over me and the chaplain and the girls. And all of a sudden, one of the girls said, and she was probably about 15, she looked up and she said, Geraldine, I want to know what virtue you see in me. And unbeknownst to me, Geraldine had heard of the Virtues Project. She had the Family Virtues Guide. And she said, I see your detachment. Because when the other girls start fighting, you step back. And the girl said, I never knew you thought I was good at that. And that was the first time I went to a prison or a jail. And at the end, this 12-year-old who had done a ritual killing, shooting, and killed somebody to join a gang for protection. She had these little braids. She was an African-American child, very tiny. She came up and said, Miss Linda, can I give you a hug? And I was about to grab her and run her out of there. And she said, I want to thank you because I didn't know how I was going to get a new lifestyle when I get out of here. But when I get out of here, this is going to be my lifestyle. Because those belong to us, right? Like you said. I said, absolutely, anytime you choose it. And I went through every prison that I ever went to. For example, like prisons in Australia, I would do the same thing. I'm here to introduce you to yourself. And one time it was a prison in Western Australia, and it was a high security prison. And I've worked with men and with women. Usually they're always separate. And at this particular one, the alpha female came in, and everybody parted. You could tell she was the powerful controller. And I asked for volunteers to do a virtues pick with me. And she volunteered, and one other woman, and the three of us did a virtues pick. We each chose a virtue. First, we shared about our life. Then we chose a virtue, and the others listed in silence, as everybody did, and then gave virtues acknowledgements. Well, she started talking and she said, I was sexually abused in my family. And then my daughters, I have 4 daughters, and they were sexually abused. And one night I got drunk and I executed the abusers. So I'm in here for life. She pulls the card, and it was the card of forgiveness. And it says you can even forgive yourself when you've done something you regret by having compassion for yourself and faith that you can change. And she read that and the tears were just pouring down her face. And she said, you know, I haven't had any hope until I read this card. And she said, somebody just put a note, she remembers that. And she said, now I know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. She said, I'll never get out of fear. I won't be able to raise my own daughters, but I'm going to raise every woman who walks in that door. She goes running down the hall, shouting to the warden, every woman here needs a book. So I got all these family virtues guidebooks. But she just lit up when she realized that there was hope for her, because even though her life was very restrained by what happened to her and what she chose and by her trauma, she still had a way to be of service. She had a way to give. And that means everything. You know, that is one of the most precious things to me about the Baha'i teachings, is the emphasis that we are here to love and to serve and to believe in the oneness of humanity and to let go of all the things that divide us. And so it's been so exciting to do this work and such an incredible journey. We're still amazed that it's lasted for 30 years and it's still going strong without us being right in the middle of it all.
And someone wrote a song for you for your amazing project.
That's right. That's
That's
right.
amazing.
And I'm sure a lot of you know Ali Yousefi. His music is just gorgeous. I want to put in a little plug that he could use any kind of donations as possible. If you go to Ali Yousefi, I think it's .com, because he allows people to use his music. And that is his calling. You know, he does all these global, absolutely gorgeous things. So I just love his work. I'm very grateful to him. So Sheila, were you there with me in that prison? I don't know if you can still see that. You know, just had a note in the chat box that she remembers.
I
that
was in the prison with you.
Oh my
I
God.
remember that day. We had
Oh.
organized for you to visit the Bandiap prison, women's prison.
Yeah.
It was such a moving experience to see this tough lady who was a murderer. And most people were scared of her, and to see her melt when her virtues were reflected to her.
Yeah.
I mean, I still remember that day. It was 20 years ago, I think. And yeah.
Thank you, darling. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. You know, one of the things that happened that day in the prison, when I started, I said, I'm going to introduce you to someone special. And then I said, you may not be aware of this, but you have all kinds of gems inside of you. And those gems are like, they're so precious. They're like gems in a mine. Those are your virtues. And I pointed to the poster. And one of them raised her hand and said, Miss, I don't have any of those virtues. I said, really? Well, guess what? You just practiced one, your confidence. And you were also honest. She goes, really? Well, and the other women were saying, you have confidence, Jackie, or whatever her name was. You do. she said, and she just lit up like, oh my gosh, I never thought of myself in that way. You know, we are the ones that mirror to a child who that child is, and whether they have value. And if all we're doing is filling our house with words like stupid and mean and what's wrong with you, it's going to tell that child you are worth less. You're worthless. But if we fill a home or a relationship with words like, you need to use your kindness. That was kind what you did over there, and that was kind what you did. Wasn't that a creative idea you came up with? Whenever you use those words, you're using the qualities of God to be reflected in the soul of that child. And the thing is, the virtues are not only our spiritual qualities, they're the characteristics of our Creator. I have created thee in my image. Man and woman, created them both. In the Bible, in Genesis, it says that we were created in the image and likeness of God. And Baha'u'llah reiterates that in his writings. And so it's very important to see the image of God in the other person. That's why, you know, I say we think in terms of virtues, we see the virtues, we listen for them, we speak them, and we act on them. Someone said, I think after 300 years, your work will still be relevant. I hope so. Now, friends, I really want to encourage those of you on the East Coast, you need to go to bed because it's really late. There's my friend Paula. So wonderful to see you too, Paula.
Dearest Linda, I wanted to suggest that maybe next month we could have another session with you about your experience with First Nation in Canada. And I wanted to see if Paula would be kind enough to chair that meeting. Linda, just privately, now that nobody is listening, let me tell you something. It was during Ayamaha where we give gifts, and it was during the pandemic, and I was just, it was this, because I live alone, it was the most difficult time of my life, and it was very, very difficult. And I went to get my mail, which I would leave there for probably a week or so. And I opened up the mailbox, and it was a nice package there. And I thought, I wasn't expecting. So it was Paula who sent me the most beautiful pair of earrings with Grace's name on it. So, you know, it was all over snow, and I started to cry and cry and cry. So Paula was the one who suggested last year that we should get connected, and I should get to find you, and I think she gave your address to me. So I just want to publicly thank Paula. Paula, show your face a little more.
Where is she? I can't see her.
Hi, Linda. It's so good to see you.
Hi, Paula.
You see me now?
Oh, yes. So good to see you. And thank you for encouraging me to do this.
Oh, thank you for doing it.
Can I tell them about, you know what?
I don't know what you're saying, so I'm just going to have faith and say yes.
Well, thank you for your faith in me. Paula and I were in a women's circle that went on for many years. And that's the kind of thing I was talking to Mina about, where you come together. I can't remember how often we did, Paula. I think it was sometimes once a month.
Yeah, it varied. It got longer over time as we all moved further away, but
sure.
Over 20 years.
And we would stay together. We would take a real retreat and spend the night and have sharing circle. and the virtues were a part of that. It was just one of the most empowering things of my life. And knowing that wherever I live, I form a circle. So I have a women's circle here on Lanai, and it's the same thing. I set very clear boundaries about the silence and the no crosstalk or no advice. And yeah, it's a virtue circle. It's lovely to see you, Paula.
You too, Linda.
How would you feel about hosting that meeting about First Nations?
Well, it's funny, as I get older and I'm not facilitating anymore, I get more and more nervous doing things like that. So we'll talk.
We'll talk. Someone else could do the technical stuff.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation,
Actually,
Bruce.
you're welcome. Thanks for your honesty about that. You know, people like Sharon who do the technical support are just worth gold, because many of us are technically challenged. I obviously am in terms of Zoom. I don't know why that happened in the beginning, but it's been very helpful to have Sharon's support and help today.
Sharon, I promise I won't say anything else, since you are the chair and I always interrupt and interject, and Paula is smiling. Probably she's agreeing in her hearts of hearts. But anyways, I was wondering, Linda Azizam, if we could say hi to a nice friend who is lying down. Probably, I don't know if Leonard is in a hospital or in a place. I don't know if he's hearing us. So I thought we ask him how he's feeling, but probably he might not hear us.
Well, that's very thoughtful, Bruce.
It's okay. So.
I just got a message from an old friend. My goodness. You're very welcome, everyone. And it's so awesome that you've come from Thailand and just all over the world. Oh,
Linda, I'm happy to have done your tech support. That is just a tiny piece of this whole puzzle. I was putting up your words and the words of your group you've worked with your husband, and I do see one more question. And would you like to unmute and say your question, Surush?
Yeah, I wrote there that in the past, this book has been honored by United Nations as a model program. So my question was, is there any way we can convince the United Nations to make this book part of the curriculum of every school around the world?
I think it's a great idea.
Humanity, you know, for everyone.
If our beloved Mildred Monaheda was still with us, we would ask her to do it and she would get it done. She lived in United Nations Plaza and was one of the main people in the faith that was helpful in the transition between, anyway, before the Universal House of Justice existed. I think it's a wonderful idea. That's something for other people to do. You know, at my age, I think my job is to keep writing and to do this occasionally. And the best I can do. But we have a wonderful network of facilitators. And, you know, if someone gets inspired to do that, it's a very good idea. Lord knows we need virtues in the world.
Including the leaders at United Nations, they should read the book.
The leaders of the world are the ones that need it the most, and they're probably going to be the last ones to get it. You know,
Can I give a virtues acknowledgement? When I didn't want to interrupt you there. I just wanted to say I'm in awe of your humility. As you've, from the very beginning of the project, you've been so reverent towards this work, and you haven't, although people sometimes call you the virtues diva, you know, you've channeled this and helped manifest it in the world in such a loving, caring way that hasn't been about you. And I'm really in awe of that.
Bless you, darling. I really appreciate that. It's very humbling because you know, we didn't even know what it was in the beginning, and it's just led us personally for such a meaningful life. But I learn from it every single day. Every day when I do my virtues pick, I know, okay, I could deepen in that virtue. You know, so that's a beautiful acknowledgement, Craig. Thank you so much. And I do think it's about time because you're going over.
Linda, we echo from all corners of the world and from our little families to, I love how the age that was specified was any age. And we're all learners, and the virtues pick sounds like a great quick way to deepen. And you have made it so accessible with the apps, with the phones nowadays and such, and even the cards. But I'm going to let Firuz say the final gracious thank you, because her words are just so powerful. So if you wouldn't mind, Firuz, I will let you say the final goodbyes. And what a pleasure.
Thank you, Sharon.
Firuzjan, unmute yourself, please.
Before I say anything, we had a hand up, and I think that was Ms. Samimi, if I remember it correctly. Please come back, we're here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think this is such a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful session. I hope we can still do this. Linda or someone would be able to host this like once a month. It's fantastic. I also wanted to, it's fantastic. I love it. I love it. I wanted to just add one more thing, which is, I always believe that the virtues are so pivotal because they are the foundation of unity of mankind, are the virtues. You know, one of the pivotal foundation for the unity of mankind is the virtues. You know, it's teachings plus virtues.
That's right. Well,
it's like it's a packet. So thank you so much. This is wonderful.
I love your zeal for that.
Thank you so much.
And I'm so grateful that as Baha'is, we were encouraged to find a way to be of service. And it's just been a fantastic journey. All of you can really serve in your own way. It's just whatever you're called to. I just want to give one quote, Firuz, and then I'm going to ask you to respect the boundary of time.
I'll do that. Please go ahead with your code. Paula
Okay.
is laughing too.
My quote is, our true calling is where our deepest gladness and the world's hunger meet. And there's so much hunger out there. So whatever way you feel called to serve, doesn't have to be dramatic, and maybe calling people up or sending them beautiful earrings or whatever you feel moved to do, or teach the faith in a different way, you know? So it's been a real joy to be with you all today. I really appreciate your invitation, Firuz, and your appreciation for this whole topic.
Thank you, Linda. Just to let the friends know that this thing happened after a year, and during this year we all went through different health difficulties, and thank God that we're all here. This is such a blessing. And I'm grateful to God that I can see Linda one more time. She spoke at a fireside at my home 30 years ago. And when she came in, she came in and I looked at her and I thought, wow, this is a Baha'i woman for me. And I really looked at her and looked up at her and I thought it was a very profound feeling that I had. And then we never really were able to see each other until today. I'm grateful that I had this chance, Linda. I love you very much. And I know that you have affected so many lives. I have so much respect and I bow to you.
And I bow to you for your love. You did this whole thing with love. And I really knew that I was not going to give up until I came and did this for you. So thank you for persevering. Thank you, everybody, for your very loving and just open, your openness to what I've shared today. And I could just feel such love and appreciation for the Virtues Project. Thank you.